Up next, I'm excited to welcome a great group of aviation safety experts to the stage, including a key FAA safety leader, the top of the top aviation safety organization, and leaders from 2 RAA member airlines. They are Jody Baker, Deputy Associate Administrator for Aviation Safety for the FAA, Hassan Shahidi, President and CEO of Flight Safety Foundation, Scott Trapinski, Senior Vice President, Safety, Security, and Environmental for Envoy Airlines, and Lee Hayes, Director of Safety for Republic Airways. We are led by our own Nabuyo Reinch, who is Senior Vice President of Safety and Regulatory Affairs for RAA. Please join me in welcoming Nabuyo and her panelists to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you for the nice introduction. Thank you so much for joining today. I could not ask better panels to discuss this important topic of aviation safety. To begin, I would like to ask everyone this question. Our industry always made strides forward with safety, but where do you think we are now? Are we paying attention to the right issues or major issues? I'd like to start with Jody.
Thank you, Nabuyo, and thanks to everyone. So the question being, where are we right now when it comes to safety, and are we doing the right things? We like to say at the FAA that we are data rich and information poor. We have so much data at our fingertips now, and everything, we can get data from everywhere. I just learned recently that my car is actually broadcasting data every time I hit the brakes. I didn't know that. I'm sure in aviation we're similarly wired up. So the question is, what do we do with that information, and how do we use it, and how do we turn it into something useful? We're in a period of extremely dynamic change. We were just listening to a presentation about pilot availability, and we have a lot of new folks in the workforce. We have, whether it's on FAA side or the industry side, we have new entrants into the system. And so we're in this period of lots of information and lots of new entrants, and I think the place we need to find is where things cross, where we have touch points. What do we do with this information? How do we fuse information sources together? And how do we turn it into something meaningful and actionable for us on the safety side?
Thank you.
Thanks, Nabuyo. I would agree with you that we are data rich. The safety programs have evolved over time from being reactive to proactive and now predictive because we have so much data. And the key to those safety programs includes our voluntary safety programs, our ASAP programs, our FOCA programs, all of which we have a great interaction with both the company management side and the union side of all of the programs being involved so that we can collect that data that's valuable and make predictions on how to improve safety overall.
Yeah, I would just add that I think we've made a lot of progress in safety, and a lot of it certainly through leveraging data, but a lot of it through the safety management system disciplines that we have integrated into our processes, through the training, through leveraging a lot of technology that's out there. And all of these have certainly contributed. And as Jody mentioned, there are a lot of new dynamics, changing workforce, new technologies being introduced. So I think it's important at this point to redouble our efforts to really understand how these dynamics are going to need to be integrated into our processes and our systems and our data. Without that understanding, we're not going to really...
Sorry, guys. I think that was me. Don't move around.
You're good? Be able to really take safety to the next level. So I think that the key point really is to really continuous improvement, leveraging all the good things that we're doing today, but continuing to evaluate and continue to improve our processes.
I think a good example is evaluating the severity and likelihood of our mics and the volume of the crackles in between.
Likelihood is high.
So, Nabuyo, you mentioned some of the larger issues that we've looked at as an industry and some of the refocus items or the potential for refocus. The larger issues, maybe some of the easier ones, and I don't want to say easy as far as ability, but easy as far as visibility. And like Dr. Hassan was saying, it's those refocus items and those smaller items is what we as an industry need to focus on. In the CEO panel this morning, it was mentioned that we don't know what we don't know. And that phrase there paints a great picture on some of the refocused items or the smaller items that we as an industry need to take a look at. And then Chip set the standard this morning in some of his statements when he said there's so much sophisticated data. And then he mentioned there's a tremendous amount of data. And the most important part here is right after that he said, and we're not afraid to share that. And that's the message that continues on, is that strive for transparency, not only at the local employee level up to the management level, but the management level through the organizational level to the oversight level. Another great example, and Hassan will probably mention this later, is the refocus of the national refocus on the ASIAS and CAST oversight groups. It's a great way and a great indication of how we as an industry are refocusing on some of those items.
That's great. That's great. So take it back to this year. In February, after a series of safety events, FAA administrator issued call to action, which led to Aviation Safety Summit in March. Jody, you moderated commercial breakout session during the summit. Could you please share with us some takeaways, key takeaways, and FAA's initiatives following the summit?
Yeah, great. So I was fortunate to moderate the commercial aviation panel or session at the Safety Summit. My co-moderator was here. She's actually here, Yvette Rose, joined me. And we had a really great discussion about where do we go now? What do we want to do with the information we have at the place we are in, sort of in this time continuum? And we came up with a couple items. One is, again, transparency. Going back to what Scott said, how do we share the information that we have in real time, closer to real time? One of the challenges with our processes now is we can do a safety risk management panel or a safety risk analysis, and it just takes too long. So we need to figure out how we can get more timely information to people who can take action, including folks at the frontline level. So that was one of the recommendations that came out of that group. Another recommendation was also alluded to already is CAST has done great things. CAST set out to identify safety enhancements, voluntary safety enhancements to address known issues in the system. They've done great. They're in the 200s in their safety enhancements. Where do they go now? We had a pile of things that we were trying to address. Where are we going to go? What are we going to go do now that we've addressed those things? So we've challenged CAST to look back not only at reducing the causes of fatal accidents, but how do we identify and reduce serious incidents? So we've challenged CAST to do that. We're going to hear a little bit more about their work. Along with CAST is a data-driven, data-informed approach. We get a lot of our information out of ASIAS, the Aviation Information Analysis and Sharing System. Are we collecting the right information there? Do we have access to the right information? Do the people who can do something with it, do they have access to the right information? So what would we do to enhance ASIAS? And finally, out of that group, we recognized that human factors continue to play a role, and we need to make sure that as we are developing risk mitigations and identifying risks in the system, we take the human into account as well.
Thank you, Jody. That kind of reminds me what former Chair Robert Sumwalt said during the summit. Those near misses are like warning, like rising body temperature, giving you something is wrong with your body. So you should, check up pay attention. And so it seems like we were doing a whole lot of health checkup on aviation safety. And Hassan, you also moderated one of the breakout sessions. And I also know that you play a very critical role in those initiatives that Jody just mentioned, CAST, Commercial Aviation Safety Team, and ASIAS, kind of a transformation. So would you share anything that you have seen so far?
Sure, yeah. CAST, for those that may not be aware, has been in place now nearly 3 decades. It's a partnership between industry and FAA and government, working together to really understand the root causes of accidents and now incidents, and then come up with systemic national level safety enhancements. Jody mentioned 200 plus safety enhancements. Those are significant safety enhancements. By the way, this is a model that the rest of the world is following, this collaboration, which we should talk about a little bit as well. But CAST is now at an inflection point. You know, we have 0 accidents, but we have seen these serious incidents over the past several months since the beginning of the year. So CAST is really revamping in terms of the processes and in terms of the types of data, additional data and information that is going to be needed. And what are the goals of CAST in terms of looking at these incidents that are now occurring, looking at root causes and precursors to those incidents, and making sure that we have the data, that we have the processes to understand what the root causes are, and then putting in barriers and safety enhancements to make sure that to address those root causes. So there's a lot of work that is going on right now. There are more than 100 experts from across industry participating in this transformation. Scott is part of that, and we're really going to be looking at revamping all of this, and by December, coming up with some recommendations to CAST to adopt and implement starting next year.
Scott, do you want to add something to that you participate, and that Lee also participates in Tiger teams?
I think the industry is excited. We had a great day yesterday talking about some of the findings that the group has come up with. And there are over 100 aviation professionals that are actually participating in this, taking a look at some of the numbers that we looked at yesterday. And that just shows that sincere interest and that desire to bring this industry even better every single day, which is something that the administrator had asked, or acting administrator had asked us earlier this year. So taking those notes forward and taking the excitement that is in the industry right now is something that we need to carry forward, like Hassan said, to make sure that, you know, by next year this time that we've got something in place to make it even better.
Yeah, it truly is a great momentum that we have right now with the information sharing that's going on between SIS and moving that up through CAST so that we can make safety enhancements.
Thank you. So obviously CAST's work and establishment of SIS was 2 huge milestones in the recent commercial aviation history. Past 2 decades, I think those are 2 major events that kind of carry us to this point. But also 2018, Part 121 carriers implemented SMS. So I'd like to turn to Scott Lee. How do you think the SMS implementation changed or continue to change the way the airlines manage safety, or has it helped in any way advanced aviation safety?
So I think a good way to look at it is to dissect really the 3 words in it, and safety, management, and system. So if you look at safety, safety has many different definitions in the professional safety realm. Most of them revolve around keeping your risks at or below an acceptable level. But really, to keep it simple, it is just a freedom from unacceptable harm. And then the management is how we enjoy that freedom. So moving from safety management into system, most of us in here, most of us are right-handed. So think of not forgetting your left arm. What I mean by not forgetting that is making sure that our organizations have that ability to learn, and then that the organization has that ability to anticipate. We have the ability to respond, and then finally we have that ability to monitor. And it's that ability to monitor that comes from that immense amount of data that we have out there. Maybe so much that we don't have the ability to analyze all of that data. But looking at the AC, and you mentioned, how did we actually evolve? How has SMS helped us evolve? SMS is a systematic approach to managing safety. And I think a good way to really sum that up is that SMS, or that management system, started out long ago that safety was a you. It was, what is safety doing about it? And then with SMS, we have evolved to, what are we doing about it? What are we doing about it as an organization? And then finally, we are at a path to where we has transformed from organization to industry. So now, what are we doing about it? It is we, it is all of us, exercising that need and desire for transparent networking to enhance our safety.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would piggyback on that with the we, that it has evolved into a culture at the airlines so that you have involvement from your ops and maintenance, dispatch teams, and it's not just the safety group that's doing, whether it be a risk assessment or participating in SMS. They're all involved in it now. They own it and they've embraced it over the last 5 years. And then now the going forward is expanding that into even the non-operational departments that, get involved in the change, whether it be the change management or the project management offices, the IT, the administrative side of the house still can embrace SMS because it's going to impact the airline and they can do their risk assessments.
Thank you, Lee.
Yeah.
How about FAA? The way for FAA to oversight, do you think it has changed?
So I'm a fan of SMS, as you can imagine. Not only am I such a fan with this body here with the 121 folks, but we've proposed to expand it into 135 air tours and manufacturers that hold production certificates and type certificates as well. So we're advocating for a big expansion into SMS. Early on with SMS, we realized that we had to change our corporate culture and how we interacted with the regulated parties. So in a traditional compliance and enforcement environment, the FAA was the traffic cop on the beat. We were just walking around trying to catch somebody doing something wrong. And that kind of relationship around watching somebody do something wrong is not conducive to a management system where we are in it together, where we're trying to collaborate and bring the brain power both of the industry and the FAA together to figure out, hey, what are we really looking at here from a risk standpoint, and how are we going to decide what to do with it? Once we figure out what we're going to decide to do with it, what's the best way to manage it, and then how do we provide safety assurance to make sure our fix stuck? So that moving into that SMS world is actually what drove FAA to implement its compliance program, which allowed for counseling, fixes, and really recognized that the highest risk to the aviation system are those participants who are either unwilling to comply with the regulatory scheme or the safe method of operations, or someone who is just flat out unable. They're just not capable of doing it. So adding compliance, expanding the compliance program to add additional tools to our toolkit actually changed the relationship we could have with the regulated entities because it allowed us more openness to identify things that maybe we don't know if it's a regulatory violation, but we want to talk about it because we think there's something going on there. So that was actually a huge change to FAA and our oversight model that occurred in result to SMS. Now, as you can imagine, I started out saying I'm a big fan, and we're going to be doing a whole lot more of it. So currently within our oversight structure, we're fairly siloed. So flight standards looks at its flight standard stuff, and hazmat looks at its hazmat stuff, and aircraft cert looks at its aircraft stuff, but they're all interrelated. So as we do oversight in the future, we're going to have to figure out how to bring our oversight models together so we can understand where are the risks in the system, what are we seeing, and pass that information ourselves internally as well. And I see that as one of our big changes moving forward is when it comes to oversight in SMS.
So speaking of SMS, I understand the Flight Safety Foundation conducted a survey last year, and many regional airlines participated. Could you please speak about the goals of the survey and perhaps share with us some of the findings? Yeah,
absolutely. And really, as to validate kind of what's being said now, which is SMS is live and well. We worked with RAA to work with all the carriers, and we had 100% participation, so that's excellent. What we found, and the study is available and is published on our website, what we found is that SMS practices are really now being done in a very disciplined way across all of the departments within airlines. That information is being collected and analyzed, and hazards are being identified, and risks are being identified, and mitigations are being put in place in a systematic way. That is great news. We had statistics up to 90+% of these types of disciplines being practiced on a routine basis, daily, weekly, monthly. What's, I think, important as we move forward, and I think we've talked about now, is the importance of safety culture. We're now seeing turnover in our workforce. We're seeing experienced people leave the industry. We're seeing new people coming into our industry. And at the heart of all of this is safety culture and safety culture leadership, without which SMS really can't work. So I think from that perspective, it's important for all of us as we move forward, from the FAA, from operators and organizations, to reinforce the importance of safety culture leadership, reporting of safety incidents, and so that we can continue to enhance our processes.
Thank you. I know many of our members are retraining after COVID with, like Hassan, you said, with new hire, conducting just culture training, SMS training. Anybody else want to share any experience? Scott, Ali?
Well, you mentioned training. Looking at the data, and speaking with someone over lunch who even brought it up, is you're right. We have that turnover. We have that newness. But we're happy to, I think all of us are very happy to say that we all monitor that training progress. And we're looking at the differences in the training as it has evolved. And also happy to share that we're very happy with the training results and the data that's coming out of that training, which is a good indication that that new hire pilot, or that the pilot that won't be with us very long because they'll be going on to a major, right, is still that same quality pilot that we've had long ago. So the culture, gonna take a look at that in a little bit, but it is something that is very important for the top-down approach. And it used to be, if you look at the AC, SMS is a top-down approach, indicating at the organizational level. But like I said earlier, now that is being transitioned from the oversight level down all the way to the front line, and that's the important piece right there.
And that's the great part about all the data that we receive. We can go back to the training department and show a trend that we've seen through FOQA data or ASAP trends, and be able to change the maybe a curriculum for the next year, and then see the trend reverse itself.
So, thank you. So we've been talking about data. I started out with Jody and everyone else kind of followed, and how speed we want to share the data. We agree we operate in data-rich environment, but do you think anything missing? What can we do to kind of advance, looking at the future? Anybody?
Yeah, I am a big supporter of FOQA and the data that we get. We have a ton of data that comes in. We leverage that to the training that we just mentioned. We also look at trends that we have, both in the way the pilot flies, or the performance that we have related to simple stabilized approach, for example. Monitoring that, making changes to the FOM that may drive a change to our stabilized approach rates. Then on top of that, we work really hard to advance the data ability by having de-identification agreements, so that we can use identified FOQA data to predict even component failures on the airplane if need be. And we can look at, a simple example of that is like the outflow valve, for example. If you're looking for a bleed leak, you'll see that in the FOQA data as it leads up when you're monitoring flight and date specific information. And then you can save yourself a stranded airplane with a bleed leak or a diversion that it may have. Same thing with hot batteries and such. But that also goes back to the pilot side, where you're looking at the performance of both the FO and the captain, and you're able to draw your own conclusions from the folk with data, and the data speaks for itself. Data doesn't lie, so you've got the data out there.
Do you look at anything that what's going right instead of what's been done wrong?
Yeah. I can jump on, or you want to?
Go ahead.
I can jump on that and just to reinforce kind of what you're talking about. SMS has served us well, and really it's a system, it's a process to really understand the risks in the system and to identify those risks and those situations that are rare, that rarely happen. But if we're only learning from rare events, then we're rarely learning. We know that 99.99% of our operations go right. So what are we doing to really tap into all of that that is going right, and understanding why those things are happening and leveraging that knowledge and that information? So the Flight Safety Foundation launched an effort just a couple of years ago. It's called Learning from All Operations, not just what goes wrong, but what goes right every day. And this effort is really to bring the safety culture that's in place in operations to really look at all of the data that FOCA captures, which is normal operations, and really understand how to take all of that learning and apply it across all of the systems.
Yeah, I think probably to add on that, what you were looking at or what you were alluding to earlier, and what Dr. Hassan added was the difference in Safety 1 and Safety 2, right?
Yes.
So here's the good news, is that we can use those terms, Safety 1 and Safety 2, in this audience and understand what that is. Whereas few years ago, we may not have been able to do that. And Safety 1, Safety 2 has been around for a while. So Safety 1, like Dr. Hassan was saying, is learning from what has gone wrong. Safety 2 is what have we learned from what is going right. And then Safety 3, or Safety 2 in practice, is more of the resilience of the safety as a holistic picture. And the resilience, not necessarily just a buzzword, but a resilience of looking at an upper and a lower control limit. And when your systems go above that upper or lower control limit, knowing that that organization can respond and still continue on. And that's the resilience that this data that we're looking at and how we're trying to achieve and shift from Safety 1, Safety 2, and Safety 3 going forward. A good example of that is looking at how we look at the data we have. In the regionals, we do have limited staff, right? We do not have a plethora of analysts going around that we are able to just say, hey, go out and tackle this, right? We don't. So sometimes we have to go outside and see how we can look at some of this data coming in. Something in the future that's coming our way is this AI, which is coming fast at us. How do we take advantage of AI? And AI is not just one thing. AI is kind of like, it has tentacles, right? It has NLP, which is natural language processing. It has DM, right, which is data mining. How do we look at that qualitative data from some of the reports that we're getting? And then ML for machine learning. When we're looking at these programs that are coming to us that we can use in the future, machine learning is something that we also have to really be cautious about when we're introducing these into our system. Machine learning takes the actions of for example, a crew when they're tackling a situation, and it's going to learn from the reactions from that crew. We've got to hope that that crew has those actions that we are expecting or that we're wanting, right? And that is the work is imagined versus work is done aspect of it. Because the data has to be good using these artificial intelligence modes to make sure that the data that's coming out of it is something that we can use moving forward.
When Scott said AI, I saw Jody's eye kind of, AI.
I did.
Would you like to add anything?
No, I agree with you, Scott. Believe it or not, the FAA does not have endless data resources either. So we are in the same boat of with all of this influx of data, how do we make sense of it with more than just locking a couple people in the room and looking through reports and sheets and so how can we leverage AI to find the patterns, to find the things? I think it's a really exciting time for us and going to be a big breakthrough on use of data. I think something else that can be, that enables us to do is look at different data sets than we've been looking at in the past. So if we've always been just measuring a particular deviation, because that's really the capacity we had, you can get more into a safety 2 type environment where you can monitor lots and lots and lots of operations and see what's happening right here because you have AI, because you have the ability to process larger and larger data sets. And that is a really exciting time to figure out how are we going to do things better. I think the other thing that's important for us is the ability to fuse and look at different things that may not be related. So we recently had something we were looking at the FAA. It was a data piece from the operational side and a data piece from air traffic. And air traffic looked at it and said, meets tolerance, looks good. But what it was doing was actually transferring an issue into operations. And so we needed to get together and talk about that and be able to put these two pieces together to understand what are we really dealing with from risk and how do we manage it, and recognize that although it might manifest as a concern in the operational side, the fix might actually be over here in air traffic. So working together with the data sets and bringing them together to really get a bigger picture is something that is an exciting use of data.
Well, thank you so much. We'd like to open up question Q&A for audience, but before we do that, I would like to kind of ask everybody, what do you think is the most important thing that we should be reminded of for us to reach the goals that we are looking? I'll start with Scott.
Okay. Hassan mentioned it earlier, and there is a driving need to tackle this safety culture, right? The culture within the organization kind of builds upon that left arm theory of the organization's ability to learn, anticipate, respond, and monitor. All of that comes from the learning culture or a just culture. And that learning culture and bringing that forward is so important because of the fact that even 10 years ago, we just didn't have that foundation in our SMS. But now, even in our opener this morning, again, when Chip was up there and he just said, you know, so safety is number one. We have to look at this data. And knowing that the support around the industry is just like that is just very paramount to building our organizations up. And knowing that we have the compliance program that the FAA is working on, the Order 8373, I think you're on C right now, but knowing that she is working toward even making that more robust to help us on the carrier side, that just demonstrates how that leadership tie-in now is all the way from the top on oversight all the way down to the bottom. So the most important thing is just keep the momentum that is going on and keep it moving forward within the industry. Get those 100 people that are very interested in moving the ASIAS and CAST forward. Keep that momentum going, and it's up to the leadership to do so, and the leadership is doing an outstanding job doing it. So jump in and tackle it when we can so we can make this even more safer.
Thank you. Hassan?
Maybe I'll just highlight two things that I think it's going to be important moving forward. One, continued collaboration. What we have seen over and over again in some of these initiatives that we've had that have been successful. They've been successful because there's been collaboration between government and industry, working together, sharing information. So I think that is one. The second one I'd like to highlight is breaking down silos. That's one of the things we've discovered, that across organizations, large and small, you have these silos, whether it's data, whether it's cultures. I think it's absolutely paramount to be able to identify whenever we have those silos, that we have a plan to break down those silos and integrate. That is going to be important moving forward because we can't have information being buried in different parts of the organization. It's important to make sure that they're transparent, that they're integrated, and that we can take full advantage of everything that's out there.
Yeah, and I would add that you need to continue to build the culture with trust. So you need the trust of the data, the trust of the leadership, the trust of the front line, so that the safety programs can continue to come together and be predictive and have continual improvement.
And Jody?
When you're last, you repeat an answer. So I'm gonna do a +1 for collaboration. ideas are a numbers game, and new ideas come from getting together and talking about them. And we can get together, we can somebody takes the nugget of a piece of information and spins it out into a brand new thing. So we need to be able to collaborate to understand the new technologies and the risks they're introducing to the system, to understand how we need to provide safety assurance for the system, to integrate the new entrants into the NAS, because they're coming. There's a lot of them and they're around. How are we going to predict and prevent future incidents and accidents? And ultimately, how are we going to continue to maintain the safety of the NAS as the American people expect of us? So it's going to happen through collaboration.
Thank you. Do we have time for Q&A? Any question from audience?
That's a high severity on our
High likelihood.
No questions? Thank you so much for joining us today. Great discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.